So now we're ready to work on her skirt. So let's hit N for a new mesh layer, and let's go to our primitive shapes. Now I think 24 spans are going to be good enough for us, so let's see how that looks. Let's just drag out that primitive, make sure that it's oriented on the Y, and using different viewports, let's just block this out. Something like this. I'm going to grab those edges. With the Selection Action Center, we're going to see if we can get close to our reference drawings. Something like this. Scale it in here. Something like that. Let's do the same with the bottom edges. Hit Y. And we'll just, let's see, let's just move that back first. There we go. Something like that. And then just take a look at the bottom. Something like this. Alright, that's a good start. Now we need to create some volume. Just going to do maybe 2 edge loops. We'll start with one right about here, and can pull this out a little bit, and then we can drag the other one up to maybe where the hips are, about like that. Double click on that loop and then just scale that out. And this is just a general shaping. And this should go pretty quickly. Something like that. And then let's cut this up a little bit. So Alt-C. And let's go with uniform mode. See what that looks like. So just like with the shirt, we want to create evenly distributed polygons. Something like that looks about like that. Now these don't have to match the exact size of the shirt, of course. It's going to be a separate garment. But we do want to be sensitive to the general shape. So clean topology. That's the goal. So here, maybe not 3, but say 2. Something like that. And then down here, Alt-C. Something like that. And that's a really good start. Let's shape this a little bit more toward, like bring the shape of her butt. Let's bring that out a little bit. Sort of fine tune this a bit more. Let's go to our center selected on the X, and then we'll check symmetry. So go to X. So let's just shape this a little bit more with our sculpting tools, just to get this general shape in place. I'm going to rough this in. Paying attention to the silhouette as much as we can. Alright, let's come back to this viewport, our perspective viewport. And then we'll do a little bit more shaping. Maybe flatten the center part off. Paying attention to we know that the anatomy is under there, so we want to be sensitive to that. Otherwise it'll look a little strange. Meaning that you could match the drawings on the front and on the side, but it may not match up in terms of structure and volume in the 3D, in the perspective viewport rather. So you want to be aware of that. And this is going to tuck up under the shirt, so that's good. Alright. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Obviously these have to go. So let's hide our unselected meshes. Here we go. Select that one and select that one. Let's create some thickness to the material. Hit B for bevel, then right click, drag this in a bit. Red handle, shift click. It's going to reactivate the tool, and then just with the blue handle pull that in a little bit and scale it with the red handle. Something like that. And that's going to be good for us. Spacebar to drop the tool and then delete those polygons on top and bottom. And just like we did with the shirt sleeves, let's bring back our geometry where we created this little more of a finished edge. Let's do the same down here at the bottom. We don't have to have symmetry on for that, but Alt-C, and let's go with free mode. Just bring this down to where we think the seam's going to be, about like that. Alright, that's good. And now we'll go with Alt-C, a symmetry mode, go to 3, and then now we click and drag, and we can drag out those edges, and we're left with a nice centered polygon, right, or nice centered line right there, or edge. So I'm going to grab this one, going to flare that out just a touch with our push tool, click and drag just slightly. Again, we're just going to create this little bit of a believable end to the fabric. That looks good. Alt-C, we're just going to tighten the inside up. Free. Just a count of 1. Something like that. And I might even want to push that out just slightly, just to make myself feel a little better. Let's hide our background meshes, and we can tighten this up too. We'll probably never see this in here, but it's always a good idea to just sort of clean off your shapes like that. Alright, that looks pretty good. So that's the skirt. Alright, so now let's work on her legs. I'm going to create a new mesh layer by hitting N, and we're going to go up to our primitives, and we're going to draw out a cylinder. We don't need 24 sides. Let's just go with 12 and see how that works for us. Click and drag in the viewport, and make sure it's oriented on the Y-axis. And we're going to drag this down all the way into the boot area. Spacebar to drop the tool. Now generally there's going to be a taper to the leg. Alright, so it's going to be thicker at the top and it'll obviously be a lot smaller at the ankle. We're not going to model her feet, so all we have to worry about is just the leg area. They're pretty straight, but we have some definition of muscle and bone, that we need to adhere to. So let's just position this maybe a little bit better inside the skirt like that. And I'm going to grab the top edge, just move this over slightly, and then I'm just going to scale that a little bit. There we go. Do the same down here. Grab this, pull this over to sort of more or less center that on that boot right around here, and we can scale that in. So hit R, scale it in. Hit Y, and that gives us access to rotation tools and scale tools, move tools. So that's our general taper, that's our general shape to start with, which is good. Very simple. Like we did with the skirt, let's just look at the landmarks. Alright, so we're going to cut this up first at the knee. Alright, so select our polygons across. Alt-C, and we're going to go with a free mode, just a count of 1. And let's just bring that towards the middle. Something like that, right above the knee. Alright, select a couple polygons here. Alt-C for a loop slice here. So now we've got this row of polygons. So select a few polygons along that loop, hit L to grab the entire loop, and then now we're just going to scale that in. And just a matter of pushing and pulling, using our reference drawings from multiple viewports to get the shape that we need. I'm going to grab that edge and let's hit Y and sort of move that out a little bit, and then maybe rotate that slightly, and we can rotate that so it doesn't feel left out, something like that. Okay, and she's got calf muscles which are pretty high, so Alt C. Let's put 2 in, maybe one that starts on the bottom, and then one that's going to be more towards the apex. Select this one, Selection Action Center, and let's pull this back a little bit. Alright, so we have a little bit of a bulge in the front, a little bit of a bulge, a little bit more of a bulge in the back, something like that. And we're just roughing this out. So again, low polygons to start with. It's a lot easier to work with lower polygons to begin with than it is to throw a lot of geometry and then fight with it. So I want to pull this, actually maybe I'll pull that up a little bit. Alright, something like that. And then I want to cut this up a little bit more, something like this. Maybe this middle edge is going to be where the knee comes out, so we could just sort of move that down into place, exaggerate that shape just a touch, and then from a front view, let's just scale that in a little bit. So scale that in just a bit. Let's grab the loop that's below it, scale that out to better match our drawing. Scale this out a bit, and then just work our way down, sort of shaping. Okay, so that's a pretty good start for the lower leg. Let's go with the upper leg. And there's this a little bit of a bulge here, and it's going to bow forward. So Alt C. Let's just go with 2 symmetrical slices, something about like that, and then select that loop, and then we're going to scale that with an automatic action, with a selection, maybe not Selection Action Center. We can get away with an automatic action center. Just pull that forward a little bit, scale it forward, then pull it forward to better match our silhouette here. And we can scale this out slightly in the front view. Alright, I want to grab these polygons or these points at the top and scale those in to create a little bit of a taper, slight taper up there. Alright, so you can see in the 3/4 view we've got the rough structure in. Okay, and we'll need to massage these points a little bit. So add a little bit of loop slicing here and there. So let's go ahead and do that, but we're good to go in terms of a start. Right? Just roughing these shapes in a good bit. Can exaggerate that knee a little bit to start with, and then refine it as we go. Tighten it up here and there. Just being sensitive to the anatomy, the geometry that we have representing the anatomy, and making those shapes into believable forms. Okay. All right, let's hit tab and see what that looks like. Let's get rid of the end polygons first. We don't need those. We'll delete those out. Bring our background meshes in. Hit tab. Okay, and you can see that we got a pretty good structure, pretty good form. It matches the silhouette basically. So I'm pretty comfortable. We'll probably want to tighten this up a little bit, just for a little bit of definition. But let's go ahead and sort of balance out this geometry by adding a few more loop slices in here. Now I like to do that. You don't have to do it, but it's better, generally speaking, to have more balanced polygons throughout here than just to have a few isolated loop slices around the knee, etc. Lower leg, not so much, but upper leg, you know, that muscle might flex or bend or whatever, more so than the lower leg. So I'm going to take this. I like that, the volume of that. I'm just going to bevel that to keep that middle slice, but just sort of bevel that out. Something like that. It's going to hold that shape, but it's going to, these extra polygons are going to support it. I'm also going to do a little bit of symmetry, or loop slices with symmetry, a count of 2. Alright, so you can see it's starting to tighten up a little bit, and that's a good thing. Alright, so Alt-C down here. Let's go with, say, 3 uniform slices. Something like that. And now the knees, like the elbows, are going to bend. And with our particular model, with our particular pose, they probably won't bend that much, but it's still good practice to have geometry in there to accommodate articulation. That's fancy talk for just add more loop slices. But they need to make sense. Don't just put everything in there, just put a lot in there. Be selective of where what geometry you put in, and then how you manipulate it afterwards. So here, loop slices are going to serve as supportive elements for the anatomy, but they're also going to provide us with a fair amount of flexibility when it comes to articulation. No pun intended. So I'm just going to shape these around here, just so where it sort of makes sense. You know, this is the crease of the knee, the back of the knee. It just makes sense that that topology might be a little tighter back here than it is, say, towards the front. We don't want it to necessarily bulge in the wrong spots, so let's push and pull the geometry to something that gives us a pleasing shape. Now I don't want her knees to look, you know, too knobby, or just to come out, you know, too much of a little bulge. So I'm going to bring up the lower part of the upper thigh, just to give her a little bit more muscle mass right above the knee, so the knees don't just pop out like that. And that geometry, it's just going to be supportive of the knee. Something like that. You can see there's a bulge here, there's a little pop to the knee where the kneecap is. It doesn't stick out so much because the top part of the leg now comes out a little bit, which is what we want. Sort of shape this around. Smooth tool, hold the shift key with the sculpt tool selected. You get access to the smooth tool. Okay, so depending on, again, how much this knee is going to bend, we can add to or delete from the geometry. I think I'm going to do a little bit more tweaking to this, and then we're going to be done with it. But I want to bring up the topology in the back just a little bit better, a little bit tighter, so that crease is a little bit more obvious. Alright, so if I bring that up, I'll probably want to bring this up too. Okay. Still be sensitive to our shape. You can see there's a little bit of flatness right there, as to be expected when you start to move stuff around. But just constantly tumble through the viewport, so you're working from multiple angles. That'll give you a better sense of the structure than just working from one viewport. Alright, so this is going to come up a little bit tighter right in the back. Okay, so I think that's pretty good. I might tweak this a little bit more, but overall I'm pretty happy with that. Let's mirror this over so we'll have two legs. Bring our background meshes up. We can just copy this over. Alright, so Shift V and then hit apply. So now we've got two legs. Alright, moving along.